Alex almost bought the wrong one. He'd been on the road for 6 hours, cell service was 1 bar. The listing finally loaded, and he saw a curved metal structure in the pines, tilted just enough to notice, with a hand-painted sign out front that said Motivated Seller. He'd seen that sign before. He'd learned what it actually meant. What it means is, someone got burned, and now they're trying to pass it to you. Alex is a developer. He's not a real estate investor. He's a guy who spent 2 years researching Quonset cabins before he ever drove out to see one. He built a 47-point inspection checklist from scratch. He took 3 weeks off work, loaded his truck, and visited 22 properties across 11 states. His only goal was to find one that was solid, legal, dry, and priced honestly. He found 5 that almost destroyed that goal. 5 that looked like deals. 5 that were traps. This is his blacklist.
Not the worst 5 he saw. The worst ones were obvious. These are the dangerous 5. The ones dressed up just well enough to fool a serious buyer. The ones that had already fooled buyers before him, based on the lien filings and court records he pulled from county offices along the way. Here's what he found, property by property in his own words. The first thing you need to understand about the Quonset cabin market is this. Most of the people selling have already lost. They bought a dream. The dream didn't work out. Now the dream is your problem, if you let it be. The sellers are not always dishonest. Sometimes they genuinely don't know what's wrong. Sometimes they suspect and say nothing. And sometimes this is the category that fills Alex's blacklist. They know exactly what's wrong and they've spent real money making it invisible. That's what makes these 5 dangerous. Not the problems themselves. The concealment. Property 1, Oklahoma. The listing that smiled too wide. 43 photos. Alex had learned by that point that 43 photos is a number with a meaning. Honest sellers take 12 to 20 photos. They show the structure, the land, the interior, the mechanical systems. They include the things that aren't perfect because they're not trying to hide anything. 43 photos means someone spent a weekend with a camera and a staging kit. It means every angle was chosen. Every shadow was managed. It means there's a gap between what you're seeing and what's there. And that gap is the property you're actually buying. The listing was a 40 by 100-foot Quonset on 3.2 acres in the Oklahoma Panhandle. $148,000. Reclaimed wood paneling inside, exposed ribs painted matte black, vintage rugs across a polished concrete floor, a propane stove centered under the arch like a piece of furniture. It looked like a magazine. Alex drove 4 hours. He arrived before the seller's agent. He always did.
He walked the exterior first. The galvanized steel skin was original. He could tell from the rivet pattern and the gauge, which he measured with a tool he carried in his vest. Original steel isn't automatically a problem. But this steel had been painted twice, and the paint on the north-facing end was bubbling. Bubbling paint on a north-facing metal surface doesn't come from heat. It comes from moisture trapped underneath. That's corrosion pushing through from the inside out. He got down on his knees at the base of the structure and pressed a screwdriver against the bottom edge where the corrugated panels met the foundation. The metal gave, just a few millimeters, but he'd felt that before. That's what base corrosion feels like when the galvanization is gone and the steel underneath has started to go. The paint on the surface is cosmetic. It's not protection. It's cover. Inside, the reclaimed wood paneling was doing a second job, not just decoration. Concealment. Alex pulled out his moisture meter and pressed it against the paneling in 3 spots. 2 readings came back above 18%. 18% is the threshold where it begins to support mold growth. The rugs on the floor were arranged in a specific pattern. Full coverage in the center of the slab, perimeter exposed. He checked the perimeter with the meter. Every reading near the walls was elevated. The slab had a hairline crack running the full length of the south wall. Recently sealed. He could tell by the color of the compound. But sealing a crack in a slab that's already wicking moisture doesn't fix anything. It's a bandage on a leak. The seller's agent arrived at 7:45. Alex was polite. He declined to make an offer. He found the same property relisted 8 months later. Different brokerage. 37 new photos. $11,000 price reduction. The lesson isn't that this property was unusually bad. The lesson is that it was unusually well-dressed. Everything that could be done to make corrosion and moisture intrusion look like character had been done. Professional staging, plausible price, excellent photography. The kind of listing that gets people emotionally invested before they ever walk through the door. Don't walk through the door before you walk the perimeter. Don't trust a room that smells like candles. Don't trust a floor covered by rugs. Property 2, Eastern Tennessee, the off-grid listing. Stop and think for a second about what off-grid means in a Quonset cabin listing. In the right context, it means intentional independence, solar, rainwater collection, composting systems, a conscious choice to operate outside utility infrastructure. There are people doing this correctly. There are well-built, thoughtfully designed off-grid Quonset structures out there. In the wrong context, which Alex found was most contexts, off-grid means no permits, unlicensed electrical work, and a septic situation you don't want to discover until after you've signed. This property was on a ridgeline in eastern Tennessee with a long view that was genuinely worth seeing. The seller had built it himself starting in 2009. He'd sourced a kit from a manufacturer that no longer exists. Spent 4 summers on the build. Solar panels on the south face. Composting toilet. Gray water system draining to a field below the structure. He walked Alex through the whole thing with the kind of pride that's earned through real labor. Alex liked the man. He didn't like the structure. The kit itself had been assembled correctly. Rib placement was right. Base anchoring was solid poured concrete. That part was fine. But the end walls, the non-structural sections that a builder typically frames out in wood, had been built with standard dimensional lumber and no vapor barrier. Here's why that matters. In a mountain environment, the temperature swings between seasons are significant. A Quonset structure with metal skin and no vapor barrier on the end walls means warm interior air hits the cold interior face of that metal skin and condenses. That water has to go somewhere. It runs down behind the end wall framing, into the bottom plate, into the drywall. Alex found the evidence in the lower corners of both end walls. Softened drywall, dark staining on the framing at floor level, classic long-term moisture accumulation. Then he asked to see the electrical panel. The seller opened it with confidence. Alex looked at it for about 30 seconds. Double-tap breakers, 2 circuits sharing a single breaker, which is a code violation. Undersized wire on 2 circuits. A junction box buried behind the wallboard with no access panel. None of these are automatically catastrophic on a given day, but a metal building with unlicensed wiring, no inspection record, no permit history, and no neighbors close enough to hear anything. That's a fire risk profile that no serious insurance company is going to underwrite at a reasonable rate. Alex asked about permits. The seller explained that his county didn't require them for structures under a certain square footage, and that agricultural land had different rules anyway. Maybe true, maybe not. The specific thresholds vary by county, and sellers in rural areas frequently believe they know the rules better than they do. What Alex knew for certain was this. When this property went back on the market after him, or when the next buyer tried to finance it or insure it or refinance it, the lack of any official record was going to become a significant, expensive problem. The absence of a permit doesn't mean you built it wrong, but it also means there's no third party who ever confirmed you built it right. He drove back down the mountain, filed it under TN 1. Property 3, Montana. The steel building dressed as a Quonset. Pay attention to this one because it's becoming more common. The listing said Quonset-style cabin. Alex flagged that phrase before he left. He drove out anyway because the price was low and the photos were good, and he'd been on the road for 3 days, and his judgment was slightly softer than it should have been. What he found when he arrived was not a Quonset. It was a prefabricated agricultural steel building, the type sold for equipment storage, that had been converted into a living space. These structures have straight walls and a shallow pitch roof. They look vaguely similar to a Quonset in photographs taken from certain angles, but they are not Quonsets. The structural logic is different. The insulation requirements are different, and the condensation behavior is completely different. An agricultural steel building is engineered to protect equipment. It's not engineered for human occupancy. The vapor load from cooking, sleeping, bathing, and breathing in a building not designed for that load creates condensation problems that require specific, carefully executed insulation solutions to manage. The previous owner had applied spray foam to the interior of the metal skin, which is the right instinct, but the execution was incomplete. Gaps at the ridge, gaps at the base, gaps around the 2 window openings that had been cut into the sidewalls. At each of those gaps, warm interior air was reaching the cold metal surface, condensing, and running back down into foam with nowhere to dry out. The smell hit Alex when he opened the door. He'd trained his nose over the course of the trip. This smell, faintly organic, like a basement that had been aired out recently, is what moisture problems smell like after someone has tried to mask them. The cellar had burned candles, left the door open before the showing, done everything right except fix what was actually wrong. Alex found the source in the northwest corner, behind a sheet of plywood, leaning against the wall. No fasteners holding it, just leaning. He'd added a note to his checklist 2 properties earlier. Always check anything that's leaning rather than mounted. He moved the plywood. Black mold, floor to ceiling, along the full seam where 2 foam applications hadn't bonded properly. The seller called it a minor moisture issue he hadn't gotten around to addressing. Alex thanked him and left. Property 4, New Mexico, the best-built Quonset on the trip, and still a no. This one is the hardest lesson on the Blacklist, because the structure was good. The structure was genuinely, verifiably good. 31 acres in the high desert at 6,200 feet elevation, pinyon and juniper in every direction. The Quonset was a 2017 build, permitted, confirmed by county records Alex pulled before he drove out, properly insulated, properly grounded, licensed electrical contractor, correctly flashed roof penetrations for plumbing vents and the HVAC flue, concrete slab in excellent condition, propane system with an inspection certificate from the previous fall. Alex has a term for what happened when he sat on the ridge above that property and watched the light move across the desert for an hour. He calls it making the case. It's the mental shift that happens when you stop evaluating a property and start building an argument for buying it. He recognized the feeling. He went back to the truck. He pulled out the parcel records. 22 of the 31 acres were in a declared wildfire hazard zone under New Mexico's classification system. That zone triggered specific insurance requirements. The insurer Alex had researched required 100 feet of defensible space clearance in all directions from the structure. It required a Class A roof assembly. The Quonset's metal skin qualified, but the wood-framed end walls did not without modification. And it required a minimum 2,500-gallon on-site water storage tank for firefighting access. None of those conditions existed. The seller had either not disclosed this or didn't know it applied. Bringing the property into compliance, clearing, end wall modification, tank installation, ran between $22,000 and $35,000, depending on the contractor. The asking price had no room for that. And without insurance, no conventional lender would touch it, cash or specialty financing at worst terms. That changes the math completely. Alex drove away slowly. He looked in the rear-view mirror twice. At the top of the folder he labeled an M1. He wrote in capitals, "Beautiful land is not a structural asset." He underlined it. He still has that folder. Property 5, Upper Midwest. The one that had already killed a deal. 14 months on the market. 3 price reductions. 1 previous sale that collapsed at inspection. Alex knew all that going in. He drove out anyway, a 2-hour shot down a county road that went from pavement to gravel to 2-track before it reached the gate. He wanted to understand what 14 months looked like in person. It looked like a partially fixed foundation problem. The Quonset sat on a concrete perimeter wall rather than a full slab. That's not automatically wrong. But the north end of the perimeter wall had settled, dropped approximately 2 inches relative to south and over roughly 5 years, according to the seller. The settling had cracked the wall in 2 places and pulled the base of the Quonset's rib panels out of true. From outside, you could see the gaps where the bottom of the north end wall no longer met the foundation cleanly. A foundation contractor had installed helical piers under the north end at some point. Alex could see the pier heads at the base. The settling had stopped. But stabilizing a foundation that has already settled 2 inches doesn't unsettle it. The structure was permanently racked. Every door in the north half stuck. The floor of the loft addition over the kitchen sloped toward the north. Alex placed a level on it. The inspection that killed the previous sale had caught all of this. The sellers were transparent. They handed Alex a copy of the old inspection report without being asked. That report also noted something Alex went looking for specifically after he read it. A stress fracture in the corrugated skin at the crown of the arch, north end, running approximately 8 inches. Sealed with roofing compound. Small, easy to miss. But crack at the crown of a Quonset's arch is not a cosmetic issue. The arch is the structure. The crown is where the load distributes. In a climate with real snow loads, a compromised crown is a compounding problem that gets worse every winter. The asking price, even after 3 reductions, did not account for the cost of engineering the repair. Nobody had commissioned a structural engineer's assessment yet, because nobody was willing to pay for an assessment on a property they didn't own. That loop, where the cost of understanding the true repair is a cost neither side will absorb before closing, is one of the most common reasons distressed deals collapse and stay collapsed. Alex sat in that gravel driveway for a long time. The structure had something he respected, a kind of stubborn endurance, standing in all that flat land under a sky the color of coming snow. He understood why someone had bought it. He understood why someone had tried to fix it. He understood exactly why the fix had stopped where it stopped. He labeled the folder MW, won and left. 3 weeks, 11 states, 22 properties, 5 on the blacklist. Alex went home without buying anything. He added 14 items to his inspection checklist. He booked another 3 weeks for the following spring. He wasn't discouraged. He'd learned something out there that no amount of research from a desk could teach him. The problems with bad Quonset cabins are almost never the ones visible in a photograph. They're in the gap between image 42 and image 43. They're in the corner the camera never shows. They're in a moisture reading on a wall that looks perfectly fine. They're in the county parcel records nobody pulls until something goes wrong. The Quonset worth buying exists. Alex knows it. He'd seen enough correctly built structures, solid slabs, properly assembled kits, honest land, to know the good ones are out there, but they don't have 43 photos. They don't smell like candles. They don't have plywood leaning against the wall with no fasteners. When he finds the right one, the listing will probably look a little plain. 12 to 15 photos, flat light, nothing hidden. The seller will hand over permit records without being asked twice. The moisture meter will read dry. The screwdriver will find solid steel. He keeps the clipboard in the truck. 469 words, 2,796 characters of text. Even the most difficult-to-spot writing mistakes, what is word counter? Apart from counting word and characters, our online editor can help you to improve word choice and writing style, and optionally, help you to detect grammar mistakes and plagiarism. To check word count, simply place your cursor into the text box above and start typing. You'll see the number of characters and words increase or decrease as you type, delete, and edit them. You can also copy and paste text from another program over into the online editor above. The auto-save feature will make sure you won't lose any changes while editing, even if you leave the site and come back later. Tip: bookmark this page now. Knowing the word count of a text can be important. For example, if an author has to write a minimum or maximum amount of words for an article, essay, report, story, book, paper, you name it, word counter will help to make sure its word count reaches a specific requirement or stays within a certain limit. In addition, word counter shows you the top 10 keywords and keyword density of the article you're writing. This allows you to know which keywords you use how often and at what percentages. This can prevent you from overusing certain words or word combinations and check for best distribution of keywords in your writing. In the details overview, you can see the average speaking and reading time for your text, while reading level is an indicator of the education level a person would need in order to understand the words you're using. Disclaimer: we strive to make our tools as accurate as possible, but we cannot guarantee it will always be so.